Today's reading is from the book Rays of the One Light, Commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible, and the topic is We Are Children of the Light. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. It is common for people to perceive themselves according to their present realities. A person in ill health says, I am ill. Few say, I am well, it is my body that is suffering. People in a low income bracket say, I am poor. Only the unusual person will say, though outwardly I live in poverty, inwardly I am wealthy. Thus, when it comes to moral and spiritual development, people commonly identify themselves with their weaknesses and mistakes. They consider it almost a sign of humility to say, I am a sinner. Though in effect what this means is that they identify themselves with their sinfulness, not with the soul's power to transcend all limitations in God. The great masters, including Jesus Christ, have always emphasized the divine potential of mankind. To encourage us, they address us as children of light, not of darkness. The Bible, in the Gospel of St. John, chapter 3, makes the point that our true home is not the mud of this earth, but the light of heaven. No man has ascended up to heaven, it tells us, but him that came down from heaven. This passage continues, even so the Son of Man who is in heaven, emphasizing that Jesus, though he lived on earth, is perceived by the eye of wisdom as conscious, even in human form, of his true reality in heavenly spheres. The way to know God is to live in godly consciousness and not to bewail our imperfection and our distance from God. Jesus said, Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And the Bhagavad Gita states, Seekers of union with the Lord find him dwelling in their own hearts, but those who, lacking in wisdom, seek him with impure motives, cannot perceive him, however much they struggle to do so. If you want to know God, Paramhansa Yogananda said, live in the thought that you have him already. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om Shanti Shanti.
It's just amazing how Yogananda during his times to his disciples and all of us kept emphasizing, you have no idea how beautiful you are. And he was talking about the light within us and the perfection that we all come from. Though in our everyday life, we tend to think that we are imperfect and we are unwell, as the reading said, or we are poor, or we tend to get wrapped in all the limitations that keep coming into our mind, and which is what, in a way, is delusion. And there is the saying from Paramahansa Yogananda that always stood out in my mind. He said, you're as blind as a bat. And it is the darkness in which we go around, forgetting that we are children of light and not children of darkness. I'd like to share a couple of stories today. And the first one is from ancient Indian times. There lived a guru with many of his disciples in a very thick, dense forest. And by the side of the ashram, there was a large, deep river, and he used to offer his teachings to his disciples by the side of the river. And he did this for many, many years, and many followers came to him from far and wide. And his teachings were very simple, and he gave mantra diksha, as it was the tradition in ancient India, to his disciples. And they would take diksha and they would go back. And time passed, and it was time for the guru to leave his body. And at that point, he told his disciples that I want you to let all my disciples know that I'm going to be leaving my body soon, and I would like to meet them. And so he had a close group of disciples who were by his side for most of his life. And they had been practicing his teachings. But they could see the difference between themselves and the Guru. And they always felt the Guru was very, very powerful and they did not have the same powers. And so they were hoping that before he leaves his body, he would share some of his siddhis so that they could all become as powerful as he was. And with this ambition, all of his disciples made sure they didn't go far from where he was. They were always roaming around his hut and being there, just waiting for that moment when the Guru would disclose his teachings. And then one day, there was a flood in the river. And the water was rising very high and it was very tumultuous. And at that time, a disciple who lived very far got this message that day that the Guru is about to leave his body. And he said, "Come what may, I have to go and meet my Guru." And the longing kept him away from all the fears that the river could practically drown him as soon as he stepped into his boat. So he came by the riverbed and he saw how tumultuous the river was. But he said, "I will just chant my Guru's Diksha and I will cross the river." It is anybody's guess. He did cross the river and he came to the Guru. But all of the disciples on the other side of the river by the Guru's ashram was watching him cross the river. And they said, so this is his favorite disciple to whom he has given all his powers. And this is so unfair. This person came to him only for one day. He had come a long time ago and he has so much power and we are not able to get the same powers. So they said, we must confront the Guru on this. And as the disciple walked into the ashram, all of these disciples gathered around the Guru and said, "Guruji, this is so unfair. We spent our entire lives with you. And here is this disciple who came once to whom he's your favorite. You had shared all the teachings." And the Guru just raised his hands and he called to this disciple and he said, "Please share with them the teaching that I have given you." And the disciple recited a simple mantra which went like this, "Kudu Kudu." And he said this with deep reverence and great faith and with great concentration and with devotion to the Guru. And all of the disciples looked around because this was the only mantra diksha that this Guru had been giving all his lifetime. And he said to them that when you seek imperfections, you will find that. When you keep looking for other things and not value what you have, then that is what will keep you going and you will waste lifetimes after lifetimes. And this is what often happens on the spiritual path. We get swept away by various, little trappings that we have. For some of us, it is the need for more knowledge and wisdom. So we keep reading without digesting what is written there. Or we take newer and newer initiations but don't practice them. And we keep looking at others and feeling that we are insufficient. But the moral of the story is those simple teachings can be deeply powerful. And what we have is what we need to value and not feel small about ourselves. It's not to go on an egoic trip, but at the same time, in the name of humility, we shouldn't degrade ourselves and realize this, that I particularly remember what Swami Kriyananda used to say towards the end of his life, and even many times in Pune. He would say, it takes very, very, very good karma to want to find God. And you don't know what good karma it has for you to want in this life to look for God. There is so much going on in this world. The world is totally out of balance. And it is constantly drawing at us from different directions. But if we just have a fixity of purpose and look at what is the goal and go with that, then the blessings of the Guru are always there with us. There's this other story from the life of Paramahansa Yogananda, and this was about his disciple Dr. Lewis, who was one of his advanced disciples and one of the disciples that came to him very early on when he went to America. Dr. Lewis, by profession, was a dentist, and he lived and practiced in Boston. And he and his wife used to go often to visit Yogananda at his ashram. And on one such visit, they were to go for a cultural program in the evening along with Yogananda. And there was a lot of excitement in the ashram because any time with Yogananda was deeply valued by his disciples. Because he was spreading teachings, he didn't have so much time to spend with them. So everyone was very excited. And Dr. Lewis and his wife got into a car and somebody shut the door. And as they shut the door, Dr. Lewis's all 5 fingers of the right hand was inside the door. And those fingers literally took the shape of the door. So they were mangled so badly. And obviously, he was trying to keep himself composed, and his wife was very, very upset about what happened. And probably in her mind, she also thought, he's a dentist, the right hand, the profession's also going to go. And she very quickly, in an upset way, ran upstairs to where Yogananda was getting ready to leave with them. And she said, Master, and he said, don't say anything. Just ask Dr. Lewis to put his hand in his pocket and not look at it. And so she rushed back, and she had enough training to trust what Master was saying. So she rushed back and asked him to put his hand in the pocket. And he put his hand in the pocket, and they went to the concert. They came back. The next day, he took the train to Boston. And I think in those times, it took about 2.5 days to get back to Boston. He got back, and the next day he went to his clinic, and he was able to perform all the dentistry he had to do that day, and the hand was perfectly fine. And Dr. Lewis said he did not experience any pain through the entire process. And the beauty of this story is, at one level, it is the miracle that was performed, which goes without saying. When you're living with an avatar, such things happen. But there is also a lesson for us, that we don't need to look at what is wrong in our lives, what is malformed, what is not functioning properly. We tend to, in the negative force of Maya that draws us down, constantly look for what is not right and how can I fix it. Sometimes all we need to do is, with deep faith, just put it in the pocket and offer it to the Guru, and he will come and make sure that anything that is broken is fixed and restored. But it is the perfection of the soul that we need to always remember. And in our whole journey of going back to God, we need to constantly draw on the blessings that we have, the teachings that we have, and the practices. One of the fundamental teachings of Kriya Yoga, as we take Diksha, is that we will practice it faithfully and regularly. And Master was very clear that that's all we need to do in order to find our way back home. And yet, we get caught in so many things. If we can only focus and get back to the core and let everything else go, and remember that it's from joy we came, and to joy we will go back. And we need to live in that sacred joy, as it goes in the poem Samadhi. Om.